Hi, and welcome to Issues and Answers. I am Claudia Monlui, your host. In this edition, we are here to turn our focus to one of the most pressing concerns of our time, renewable energy. We will be unpacking the current state of Saint Lucia's energy sector and exploring the road ahead as the country moves to a more sustainable and resilient energy future. Joining us for this important discussion is Mr. Kurt Inglis, the Acting Chief Energy and Public Utilities Officer from the Department of Infrastructure, Ports and Transport. Mr. Inglis, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Claudia. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's start by setting the stage for the benefit of our viewers who may need a little context as to the meaning of the term energy sector.
Okay, so when it comes to the energy sector, especially in Saint Lucia and in the region, we are speaking about the electricity sector, how we get our electricity, the sources that we use. We are speaking about transportation, the fuels that we use for transportation. So the energy sector is an all-encompassing sector. And it really looks at the power that we use, where we get it from, and what is the end use.
Now I know when it comes to energy, of course, it definitely gathers a lot of attention as to where we are going with this journey.
Yes.
And it also can boil down to our pockets. So consumers normally pay attention to any such development in the sector. How would you summarize Saint Lucia's current state as regards the biggest achievements and challenges that we've encountered on this journey towards renewable energy?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. When it comes to the current state of the energy sector in Saint Lucia, I think we can characterize the energy sector in Saint Lucia as one that is in transition. So we are moving from what has been a traditionally fossil fuel based system to one that is reliant more on indigenous and renewable sources of energy, the sun, the wind, and in the case of Saint Lucia, you're looking at geothermal energy, which comes from the fact that we are a volcanic island. So what we have is this move away from largely importing all of our energy sources in diesel and gasoline, and being able to utilize the sources that we have here in Saint Lucia so that we can become what is called energy independent. So that is the overall goal when it comes to the sector. This does not come without its challenges. We are a small island, so the technology that is required, the knowledge that is required, we have to build that knowledge in a very limited capacity of persons that we have. And we also have to still rely on importing largely that technology, solar panels, wind turbines. All of these we do not manufacture in Saint Lucia, although the power that they produce comes from the resources that we have naturally. So this can be a very massive challenge, and the upfront cost is usually more expensive. So that is a challenge. But in terms of the opportunities and the successes that we've had, we have seen where Saint Lucia has firmly planted a foundation for us to transition. We have several companies, several entrepreneurs that are interested and are driving the energy transition in Saint Lucia. And we also are developing a robust legislation that is going to allow for locals as well as foreign investors to come into Saint Lucia so that we can utilize this renewable energy resource that we have so abundantly.
Okay, and this is the direction of the world, and it's a momentum that has infiltrated many different sectors. What is the balance that we are hoping to strike between the renewable energy and, of course, the finite fossil fuel energy?
Okay, so right now we have set a renewable energy target. So you will hear, when you hear of St. Lucia's renewable energy target, you will usually hear two targets. The first target, which is the one that comes out of our national energy policy, is 50% renewable energy by 2030. So that means 50% of the energy that we utilize in St. Lucia we expect to be from renewable energy sources by the year 2030. And I know that is a very short timeline, but we are very hopeful and very ambitious to be able to meet that. Then you have our nationally determined contributions, which comes from our climate change targets. So St. Lucia being a country that is party to the Paris Agreement, every 5 years or so, we renew our targets for our emissions reduction. And this year, St. Lucia being the first Caribbean island to submit its new NDC, we have set a target of 40%. That is 10% shy of what is in the national energy policy, mainly because in the next 5 years, we are expected to increase that 40% target. So we're hoping that by the time we get to the NDC target, we'll be well on our way to increase maybe even our 50% target.
Okay, could you expand on what NDC is for the benefit of our viewers?
So NDC is nationally determined contributions, and it is basically every country's commitment to reducing its carbon footprint.
Okay, drawing closer to home, I know you've mentioned 2030, but drawing closer to home, what are our priorities? Because we are taking it in bite-sized pieces. So what are our priorities for, say, the past year, 2024, into 2025?
Okay, so our priority number one is the transformation of our legal framework in St. Lucia. So as I mentioned earlier, we are coming from a system that is primarily fossil fuel based. So everything that we have done, everything that we have is set up for that type of system. So we want to transition to a renewable energy based system. That requires the legislation, which is the Electricity Supply Act, the current Electricity Supply Act that governs the electricity sector. That requires that act to be totally reformed so that it can be, it can incentivize renewable energy. So our immediate goal is for the passing of that piece of legislation, which will be a transformative piece of legislation that governs the entire electricity sector, from how we determine how much is paid for electricity, how we determine how much is paid to a customer who produces renewable energy, right? How we grant licenses to companies who are coming in to produce energy from renewable energy, and also how say for instance, the average St. Lucian can benefit from this sector. So this is why this is our immediate priority for the remainder of this year. And going into next year, we are looking to set up all of the structures necessary for us to have our first large-scale independent power producer renewable energy systems.
Okay, so that sounds like there are many, many considerations going into this initiative, and with many considerations come many stakeholders.
Yes.
So can you give us an understanding of the stakeholders on the national, regional, and even international levels, and their involvement in helping us to go forward. And also linked to that, whether we have any financial support coming out of it as well.
Wonderful. So as you rightly mentioned, and this is something that the CDB has outlined, the energy sector is a very complicated sector, and it requires you to work hand in glove with a lot of the interested parties. So in terms of national stakeholders, we have the Sustainable Development Department, which is the climate change arm of the government of Saint Lucia. We have the Ministry of Finance, so they play a very critical role. You have the electricity utility. You cannot remove them from the equation, because any power that is generated from renewable energy, they will be the ones to take that power and get it to the homes in Saint Lucia. You have the National Utilities Regulatory Commission, who is the regulator for the electricity and water sector in Saint Lucia. They have a very important role to play, because they will be the ones actually procuring renewable energy systems. You have the academia. We work very closely with the Saint Louis Community College, the University of the West Indies. Regionally, you have the CARICOM Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, the CCRE. They are a very big partner of ours. The CDB, like I mentioned. You have the World Bank internationally. They play a very pivotal role in bringing in a lot of the grant financing and concessional financing needed for us to not only look at developing projects, but also putting all of the structures in place so that it is easier for us to make this transition. And there are several other non-governmental organizations that we work with, and businesses in Saint Lucia who are a part of the energy sector and will be either installing systems for the general public or themselves developing large-scale systems. So it is a very complicated mesh that we navigate on a daily basis to ensure that there is coordination across all sectors.
As we had previously mentioned in a sidebar before beginning this interview, it's easy for energy-related activities to just go over our heads.
Yeah.
So can we zero in on a few examples? I know currently we have the Jazz Festival, for example, and we have a lot of high-profile, huge events taking place, and how that would tie in with the energy sector, or perhaps persons now wishing to comply with the use of LED lights, for example, more at the household or public security level, how those initiatives, which seem to be sort of on its own as standalones, actually ties into the bigger picture.
Okay, so when you look at the broader picture of the energy sector in Saint Lucia, it is a cross-cutting sector. So when it comes to, say, festivals like the Jazz Festival, a lot of these events require large amounts of electricity, right? To run the stage lights, to run the microphone speaker systems. All of these things require large amounts of electricity. And that electricity currently is coming mainly from fossil fuel, mainly from our local utility, Lucelec. The goal going forward is for that energy to come from renewable energy sources, or that electricity to come from renewable energy sources. I'm glad to say that a lot of the lights in a lot of the playing fields, the stadiums have been changed over to LED lights. So those lights now actually reduce the amount of electricity that is required for these events. And the utility Lucelec is currently running a 3 megawatt solar farm in Latony Vieux-Fort, and that solar farm is contributing heavily to our current renewable energy mix in Saint Lucia. So although it is a small piece of the puzzle right now, I think you can see how everything that we do and everything that we touch when it comes to us consuming electricity, all of it has the potential to become more sustainable and to be part of this mix that is powered by renewable energy.
We'll take an important message and be right back.
Yo, OECS, this is your ocean. If I am to protect your future, we have to work together. It's the time to work together. If I am to help protect your future. Once I used to be so pure and clean, and those hills were so fresh and green. But now you see me as your dumping ground. The current situations has me choking on your pollution. Think hard about it. You will agree that really there is no you without me. Make the zero waste pledge, be responsible. Reduce your waste, recycle where possible. It's down to you, so make the commitment. Recycle for blue oceans and our betterment. Recycle OECS, green actions, blue oceans. For blue oceans and our betterment.
Welcome back as we continue our interesting discussion. I'm sure our viewers are learning a lot. Let us now turn our attention to the ongoing projects.
Okay, thank you so much. So I think Saint Lucia has a lot to get excited for when it comes to renewable energy and the energy sector on a whole. So we would have, over the course of this year, we would have signed on to or been able to mobilize almost $60 million in projects that we are rolling out between this year and the next 4 years. So two of the major projects, the first one is in energy efficiency and renewable energy for public buildings. So when I say public buildings, that includes schools, hospitals, government offices, fire stations, police stations. So these buildings will receive energy audits. So the energy that they use, we will assess the energy that they use and see where we can reduce the amount of electricity that is used in the buildings through specific investments, and they will also receive renewable energy systems. So through this project, which is called the Caribbean Efficient and Green Energy Buildings Project, which is supported by the World Bank, we are expecting to target 150 buildings in the Saint Lucia public sector. And this, through these initiatives, we're looking at least 20% electricity cost reduction, and we're also looking to at least 50% of the electricity that is going to be used in these buildings will be coming from renewable energy. Right? So this will redound to significant savings, not just for the government of Saint Lucia, but also for the users of a lot of these buildings, and especially when it comes to our youth, our school children. They will be able to interact with this technology at their schools. The second project is the Renewable Energy Infrastructure Investment Facility. Now, this facility is what is expected to help us break through that barrier for the achievement of our 50% renewable energy target. So this project directly addresses a lot of the gaps that we see in the energy sector, attracting developers that are reputable and are able to deliver on on these systems, being able to go out to the wider market for renewable energy systems. So over the next 4 years, we are expecting to, coming out of this project, to go out to market for large-scale renewable energy projects in wind, solar, and once we have proven our geothermal resource, for a geothermal power plant. And all of this is going to come from these projects that we have. But beyond that, the social aspect of these projects, we recognize that that capacity that I spoke about earlier, it does not innately exist in Saint Lucia. And currently under the Renewable Energy Sector Development Project, which is our geothermal project affectionately, we are offering scholarships for young women to attend the Saint Lucia Community College, fully funded, and they have a 6-month internship afterwards. We have continued this initiative under these new projects, but we are also bringing in our young men. So we are providing, again, fully funded scholarships for young men and young women who are interested in the energy sector or any STEM field, science, technology, engineering, and math field, because we recognize that we need to build the workforce to sustain our energy transition. And there is one more project that I want to mention, which is a very dear and groundbreaking project. We are very vulnerable in Saint Lucia. Every year we face the Atlantic hurricane season. And one of the things that always happens is that there's a need for shelters, there is a need for power in time of disaster. So we are developing along with the German government and the European Union what is called a microgrid. This microgrid is going to be hosted at the Dennery Infant and Primary School in that complex. And these two buildings will receive renewable energy and battery storage so that they can continue to operate as hurricane shelters during times of disaster. So we're hoping that coming out of this project, we will have a model where we can upgrade a lot of our hurricane shelters so that when a hurricane, or if a hurricane eventually hits, and we are in need of power, whether it be for medicines, whether it be to preserve food, that this is available through these microgrids. And we're hoping that, well, this project is underway already, and we are expecting that by between 2026 and 2027, we are completed with this microgrid project.
Well, as you peel back the layers, I must commend your department. A lot is going on, and it is very important that the public is made aware of the amount of hard work that is going into ensuring that Saint Lucia is very well positioned in respect to renewable energy. So by 2030, we are very much on the footing that we would like to be at. I would like us to go back to the fully funded scholarships, because that is very exciting, and it is aimed at youth interested in energy sector careers. How would some young man or lady who is interested in accessing the scholarship go about getting in there?
Okay, so there are two ways to go about it. You could either go to the RESDP website, right? That's the Renewable Energy Sector Development website, or you can go directly to the Saint Lucia Community College. They can direct you to the scholarship program, right? And they walk you through the application of the program. And the program is not just about the academic side of things, the grades and everything. We also want to ensure that the students have all the necessary tools. So transportation is taken care of. You don't have to think about that. Your clothing allowance is taken care of. You don't have to think about that. Your food, all of that is taken care of. You get a laptop for you to do your work. You get a toolkit. for those students that have these technical programs that require that. So what we want to do is to ensure that the only thing that the student has to think about, or the parent has to think about, is encouraging your daughter in this instance and your son as the program develops, to take their studies seriously and to make the most of the opportunity that they have. And currently we are seeing some significant progress or results from this program, because the young women that are recipients of this scholarship, some of them are topping their program, right, in electrical, in mechanical, even in auto mechanics. So we think that this model is one that we need to follow more to ensure that our young people are well placed to take advantage of all the work that we are doing.
And definitely more and more opportunities will be opening up in that sector.
Exactly.
So there will always be opportunities for lots of career opportunities as well. What are the lessons or best practices from other Caribbean nations that Saint Lucia is drawing from as it crafts its own energy strategy?
Okay, so a lot of islands are at different phases, and it is always good to take a step back and see what our sister islands have done and where we can learn from them. So Grenada has already passed their electricity legislation. So we are pulling from some of the experiences that they have, be it positive and negative, and learning from some of the mistakes that they would have made along the way, especially when it comes to the interaction with their incumbent utility, so that we don't make those same mistakes, so that we ensure that our stakeholders are on the same page, consulted, and we are moving forward with buy-in. Barbados is another one that is to be commended, because they have went ahead of most of the Caribbean, except for probably Jamaica, in terms of their renewable energy uptake and as well their electric vehicle uptake. So we are taking some of the learnings from what they have done in renewable energy, especially storage. That will become one of the big questions when it comes to renewable energy. So we're learning from what they're doing, and we're trying to implement now conditions for how we are going to store the electricity that is generated from renewable sources, because we can appreciate the sun is not out 24/7, right? When night falls, we need to ensure that we have stored some of this energy that we have generated from the sun, so that it can be used at times when the sun is not around. The wind also is not a constant resource. So a lot of these resources are what is called variable. So in order to firm up these resources, the storage needs to come into the conversation. So we're learning from what Barbados has recently done in the storage field, and applying some of these learnings to our our approach for our legislation and our policies. And also, I briefly mentioned the electric vehicle sector. Saint Lucia is making significant strides as far as electric vehicles go. And very soon, we will see the government fleet introducing at least 16 electric vehicles of various types, so that we can determine, okay, how best can they fit into our system, what vehicles can we continue to transition, what vehicles are probably not yet ready, and how we can reduce on the amount of fuel that we use in the government sector, and it will redound to the private sector learnings for them as well.
Okay, and on that note, I would like to invite you back sometime to keep us abreast. For now, we want to thank our viewers for joining us. And I am Claudia Monlouis, and on behalf of Mr. Kurt Inglis, the Acting Chief Energy and Public Utilities Officer, we wish you all the best. See you again next time.